Hi, today I'm at Rattray Head on the north coast of Aberdeenshire, and the plan is to go deep into the dune system and find somewhere where I can set up a bivvy, and when I get there I'll tell you a little bit more about the amazing history of this place. So I think what we'll do is I'll get my Bergen on and let's yomp into the dunes. Okay, so I found a spot and that took a lot longer than I was expecting it to. The wind is really picking up. It's forecast to be about 35-40 mile an hour winds tonight, which is quite high. And I know that the winds are always a lot higher here at Rattray Head. It's very exposed, and the way the sand dunes are formed, the wind kind of funnels along the kind of valleys in the sand dunes. So although some places like over behind me initially looked more sheltered from the wind direction, they were like at 90 degrees to the wind. The wind was actually funneling up, so it was like a wind tunnel. So I think I found a spot. It's not perfectly flat, but it'll do. I filled in some of the divots with sand, and I think the bank to my right should be enough to give me a bit of shelter. And I'm using a new tent. Yep, I bought myself another tent. Black Friday deal at Alp Kit. I bought myself an Elan hooped bivvy, and it's a really nice little bivvy. I've been looking at it for quite some time. It's got two poles and they cross over at the head, and you can actually lift the foot end up with a small pole, which I've added to it to give it that extra function. So I'm going to set that up, and then I'm going to set my ultra lightweight tarp in a kind of lean-to above it. I've bought two trekking poles, and I'm going to set that so I've got a bit of shelter, maybe just from the wind, because I don't think we're forecast for rain, but you know, the weather changes very quickly here, so you know, you've got to be careful. Well, that's me set up, and as you can probably see, it's not quite how I planned it. Now, I had planned on using a tarp over the top to two trekking poles guy lined out, and I've done that plenty of times before, but I bought the Sil nylon tarp, my ultra lightweight rab tarp, which is a brilliant bit of kit, but it does tend to flap about in the wind, and the wind is deceptively strong here, and I could not get it stable. Even with side guy lines and lots of pegs, it was pulling the sand stake pegs out the ground, and it just wasn't worth it. So I am sleeping tonight in the bivvy bag on its own, and it'll be the proper test of it. I've got no doubts about it. The Alp Kit stuff's pretty good in my experience. So that's it. I think the biggest challenge will be keeping the sand out of it. So I think what I'm going to do, I shall prepare myself for some food in a minute. But first of all, I shall go for a walk on a beach, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the amazing history of Rattray Head. This is Rattray Head. It's a small spur of rock that sticks out into the North Sea, and it's the site of many shipwrecks over hundreds of years. This seemingly gentle headland is actually the site of a rock reef that stretches nearly 2 miles out into the sea, with water depths changing from the hundreds of feet to less than 20 feet in a couple hundred yards. This, coupled with insane tidal races and regular whiteout conditions known locally as the Har, made this place struck fear into mariners for hundreds of years. Now, in the 1830s, shortly after the foundation of the British Coastguard Service, a lookout station was built here. 5 families lived in a purpose-built terrace with watches from the lookout tower on the hill maintained 24/7. Now, the Coastguard station was equipped with dedicated telegraph lines connected to the lifeboat stations at the towns of Peterhead and Fraserburgh. They also had flares and rocket-assisted rope-throwing equipment. Now, their job was to alert ships venturing too close to the rocks and to call for help if they needed it. Now in our modern times that might seem strange, but in a time where ships had no radios and the houses on shore had no telephones, a shipwreck at this remote headland was a serious thing. They had no way of calling for assistance and they were at the mercy of Mother Nature. The lookout was manned continuously well into the early 1900s, summoning lifeboats again and again to assist the stricken seafarers, but everyone knew more was needed at Rattray Head. Work began on the lighthouse in 1892. Mariners and local communities had petitioned Trinity House, who were responsible for building all of the lighthouses in the UK, many times over a period of 47 years after the initial proposal by the famous lighthouse designer Alan Stevenson. After multiple refusals and a heated discussion in the Houses of Commons, a consortium of interested parties including shipping companies, harbours, insurance companies and lots of seafarers, led by the engineer, came together to sidestep Trinity House and pay for the building of the lighthouse themselves. Now the commissioners, as they were called, approached the Board of Trade with their proposal to fund the building of a lighthouse. The Board of Trade agreed and instructed Trinity House to undertake the project. The light was first lit in 1895 and sported a 5-wick paraffin lamp with the power of 44,000 candles, which at the time was an amazingly bright light. The lighthouse is unique in its design and it sits on top a 46-foot granite pedestal within which are a generator room and a massive foghorn. Now the lighthouse itself is 120 feet tall and is accessed from the land by a causeway which is 7 feet beneath the water at high tide. Accommodation for the keepers and their families was also built at the same time, which has over the years since automation been used as a youth hostel and a B&B, but now it's in private ownership. In 1977, mains power and telephone were fitted via an underground cable to the lighthouse, and in 1984 the light was automated, bringing to an end the need for lighthouse keepers to tend the light.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that bit of history. The keen-eyed amongst you will have noticed I didn't mention Seatown, which is an abandoned village that sits between the Coastguard cottages and the lighthouse keepers' properties. So I hadn't forgotten about it. I think it's a really good spot and I think it warrants its own video. So when we get some longer days in the summer, I'll probably go and do a stealth camp in the ruins of the village. But well, I've had a walk along the beach and I don't think you can make that out. The tide's pretty much in now. So I'm going to head back down to the bivvy and get myself a brew. And I'm also going to look for somewhere to have a fire because I brought in a big bag of wood. And I think once it goes dark tonight, I'm going to have a fire as long as the wind stays down, because obviously there's a lot of dry grass around here and I don't want to go and be the one responsible for setting fire to the dunes. So as long as the wind stays calm, which it's kind of dropped down a bit now, I'm going to get myself a fire. But for now, I'm going to go and get a brew. And there we go, a nice cup of char, and here we are. So tea time, and I think very soon it'll be time to have some food. So I'll see you in a bit once I've had my brew.
It's 4:10 and the sun is dropping rapidly, but I'm absolutely Hank Marvin, so I've decided to get my dinner on and it'll make a change cooking it in the daylight. So tonight I'm using my fire maple stove, Toke's titanium pot, titanium foil windshield. We've got a new noodle. It's My Jang wide noodles with My Jang chili oil. And yeah, chili oil normally strikes a fear of God into me, so I probably won't be putting all of the chili oil in, but we'll see. And it's in a cardboard tub, but I'll probably put it into my insulated bowl because the temperature's dropping, and these wide noodles, the instructions say that you have to put the water in, leave them for 10 minutes, I think it says, then pour the water off, then put the chili oil on. So this is not a soup, this is noodles. So I'll put it into my bowl to try and keep them warm. And with that, I'm having Spam, massive tin, it's all we could get, so oh well, I've got to eat a lot of Spam. And for afters, rice pudding, because why wouldn't you? And I'm going to wash it all down with the 1079 Project Pilsner. Just the one, but that'll do. So I shall crack on with that, and I'll bring you back when the noodles have sat for 10 minutes and they're in the bowl with the Spam ready to go. Okay, that's the noodles done. As you can tell, it's now getting dark very quickly. I'll quickly show you the noodles. I've drained them, and there you go, big flat noodles. And what was in the tub was a small sachet of brown, I think kind of soy or fish sauce maybe. A bigger sachet of kind of cloudy sauce, I don't know, like a curry sauce maybe, and an oily one with chili flakes in, which I'm pretty certain is chili sauce, is chili oil. So we'll put that one in last. We'll put all of that in, I think, and we'll put all of that in, and we'll see what we get. So I'll just do that now. If I can balance it on my knee. Now the challenge here is keeping it out of the sand, because basically everything is now covered in sand, which is great fun. Oh, there we go. So that's the little sachet in. Oh, now that smells like black vinegar. That does. That smells like, yeah, that is Chinese black vinegar. Now I like that stuff. How do we open this? So now for the cloudy brown sauce, which isn't exactly selling it, is it? But oh, that's that open. Oh yeah, that's quite thick. Yeah, that's definitely a thick old sauce. That it's got. In fact, I need to encourage that out the sachet. There's some lumps in that. Like I say, I'm not really selling it, am I? There we go. It hasn't got much in the way of an odour. So I'm going to mix all that in. Oh, it does smell good actually, that smells rather nice. Now, lumps of Spam. And I think what I'll do is I'll stick half of them in, and then I'll add more as I get down the noodles. There we go. We'll turn that into the sauce. So they're all coated. It's looking pretty good. And now the evil stuff. So we'll make sure it's all mixed together and find where the tear point is, so I don't end up putting the whole. No, that's not it. I don't want to put all of this in. And of course, the one sachet that doesn't want to tear is the one that I want to be careful with. Yeah, I am going to have to get my knife out for that, because that's it. There we go. Good old Opinel. Because there's no way I'm risking sticking all of this in, because I'll end up with those volcano noodles again, and yeah, don't want to go there. So a little bit of that. That's about, I don't know, about a third of that, I think. Pop that up there. Stir it all in. Oh God, that chili oil's got a weird. Oh man, that's got a bit of a hink to it. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah, it's chili. Oh God, it's got a weird smell. Okay. So, there we go. That's the, whatever that was called. There we are, that. I'll sure see if I can spike one of the big noodles and stick it in my mouth. Yeah, that's nice. That's not as hot. Maybe that's the worst thing I could have said. That's not as hot. I'm going to stick more of this in. Yeah. That's about 2/3 of it now. I may live to regret that, but the brown sauce is kind of meaty, and I think there's peanuts in there as well. Yeah, that's quite interesting. That's not like anything I've eaten before. That's good. I'm going to tuck into that while it's still warm, because it's chilling down rapidly, because it's not got the soup base that I normally have in my noodles, keeping it hot. So yeah, it's already cooling down. So I'm going to nosh down on this. Oh man, the chili's starting to kick in there. And I'll report back in a minute. So I'm going to crack open my tin of beer. Yeah. Yeah, the chili is kicking in now. Maybe putting 2/3 in was an error, but hey. Well, that's the noodles done. And, well, they were nice. They had their own funk going on. I checked the labelling, and they're Chinese. And they definitely got a kind of a Chinese funk. They'd got some interesting flavours. They weren't that spicy. I could have put all the chili oil in, but, you know, that's always a risk with chili oil. Like some of the Korean ones blow your head off with the amount of chili oil. So yeah, it is. And actually, when I looked closely on the packet, it had a single chili on it. So it kind of did actually tell me on the packet, but there was so much kind of Chinese, Asian lettering on there. It was fairly undecipherable. But yeah, Chinese noodles, wide noodles, and they were very nice. But one observation, it's quite cold tonight, of course, January, north of Scotland, and they chilled down really fast. The minute I poured the water off, they were cooling, and I think my Spam kind of sucked the heat out of them. So I'll probably stick with the kind of soup noodles from here on in, because that way you're guaranteed you're going to get a hot bowl. But to that aside, they were very good. My beer, 1079 Pilsner, is actually very tasty. I've still got a bit left, and I'm now going to make sure every last part of my hollow legs is full by eating a can of rice pudding. And when that's done, I think I shall have a fire, which isn't like me, but I brought my wood in, and I'm going to set up a little fire just over there, and I'll bring you back when I've lit my fire. There we go, got a fire going. It's a kind of sorted Dakota fire pit. Well, it's kind of in a hole with a channel to get air to the bottom of it, and it's kind of really just to stop any embers blowing onto the marram grass, and, you know, keep it low profile. I am the invisible camper after all. So I'm just going to sit down next to this and warm up a bit, because let me just sit down. There we go. Yeah, it's getting cold now. I mean, I know it's January, but we had a very cold snap a couple of weeks ago, and now it's gone the other way and it's warmed up, and it's been kind of 10 degrees at night, but it's, well, you can see by my breath, it's definitely not 10 degrees. I'd say it was about 3 or 4 degrees, so I think I'm in for a cold night. And it's kind of gone, there's been a, what would you call it, a dew has dropped. The bivvy bag is covered in moisture, as is my rucksack. Thankfully I chose to cover it up, so I've got like a small tarp over the top of my rucksack, and I've got a big waterproof bag which I'm going to put my boots in just before I get into my thing. But for now, I'm going to there we go, spin that round. I'm going to sit next to this and keep warm, and I'll probably speak to you next when I'm about to get into my rather snug little bivvy bag, because I shall give you a bit more feedback about that in the morning. But first impressions are, yeah, if you're 6'4" and a big chap, it's quite a tight fit. So, but it'll be all right, and I'll give you a kind of more detailed review of it first thing in the morning. So I'll see you a bit later on. Well, it's 11 o'clock, and well, I've gone to
start getting ready to get into my bivvy, and it's a bit of a palaver really. You know, everything's got to stay outside it. This bivvy is a bit snug for me. It's the first time I've used it, and I'm 6'4" and quite wide, and yeah, it is a bit of a squeeze, but alarmingly, the bivvy's frozen solid. The outside of it's covered in frost, but worryingly, the inside has got a lot of frost on it, and I've not even been in it yet, so I don't know why there's any moisture in it. I don't know whether it's leaking or whether I'm just expecting too much of it. You know, this is January in the north of Scotland, so, and it's very wet at the moment. It's not rained, but there's been a very heavy dew and everything's absolutely soaking. So I'll spin it around and see if you can see it. Now, I don't know if you can make that out, but I mean, you can make the inside out as well, but yeah. But that's wet on the inside as well, and me lying in this, my arm is going to be touching the outside of this bivvy. I've got a down bag as well, which is always a bit worrying when everything's getting a bit wet. So I've taken the executive decision to chicken out. Yeah, I'm packing up and I'm going back to the van. And when I get back to the van, I'll make the decision whether I kip in the van or whether I go home. Now, I've just spoken to my missus, and there's a nice hot chocolate waiting for me back at home, so the chances are I'm just going to bail out. I'm only half an hour from home, so what I'll do is I shall pack up, we'll yomp out, and I'll speak to you when I get back to the van. That's me back at the van, and yeah, it's 0 degrees, the windscreen's frozen solid, everything else. It's a really weird night. It's very damp and it's freezing up. You'd think it had rained, but it hasn't. But anyway, I've had a few seconds to think about it, and I'm going back to my bed at home. Why not? So yeah, I bottled it on this one. I'm going to head off home and I'll do a wash up in the morning and give you the highs and lows and give you my thoughts on what I think went wrong and whether that bivvy is any good, if I'm going to use it again. So I'll see you tomorrow in the wash up. Well, that's me back home. It's the next day and I've had time to have a think about what went on and to have a look at the footage, and pretty much it was my fault. The Alp kit stuff worked perfectly. It was operator error. Now, this Alp kit bivvy addresses some of the problems you get with hoop bivvies. It's got really good ventilation. It's got a big mesh panel at the one end and a big mesh panel that kind of hangs over your face. And the idea being, if the weather's good, you don't have to zip yourself in. You can have it with lots of airflow. Now, when I set it up, and I'll put the footage up here, when I set it up, in fact, I'll move over a bit, put the video there. When I set it up with the ventilation panels wide open. So as that temperature changed and the dew dropped, and my God, it was a really heavy dew. It was almost like a fog. Everything got saturated and the air kind of must have moved into the bivvy and coated everything with moisture. Now, my sleeping bag was absolutely soaking wet. And yeah, I think if I'd have been up on the hills or I'd have been a long walk from the van, I'd have probably just put my waterproofs on, got into my bag and toughed it out. But I was only half an hour from home, and let's face it, I do this for fun. And sleeping in a wet down bag is not fun. So that was why I bailed out. But I'm pretty sure there's nothing wrong with the bivvy. So I'm going to give it another shot. So maybe when it's a bit warmer, later on in the year, I'll go out and I'll do a camp using the Alp kit Elan bivvy. So there you go, that's what happened. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, it would be great if you click the subscribe button. And if you are one of my subscribers, if you could share the video, it also helps me get seen out there. That all being said, until the next one, I'll say ta-da. Ta-da.